Good evening. Welcome to Community and Technology, where we connect the global community with news, information, and resources to hopefully help improve your life. I'm Stu Reid. I'm here with my UBI co-hosts, Diana Blackwell, president of PSA 6, and Fred Samuel Houses. Welcome, Diana.
Hello, everyone.
And Enno Schmidt from the University of Freiburg in Germany, UBI expert extraordinaire. Welcome, Enno. And today we have a very special guest. She's the founder and CEO of Spark of Hudson, Susan Danziger, CEO and founder of Spark of Hudson. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
And would we please, I would like to acknowledge Miguel Walters, also one of my co-workers here in the community. He has joined us.
Hi, Miguel.
Walters.
Well, hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
We hear you fine. We don't see you, but we hear you fine.
Well, I am here now, and again, like Diana said, I am very excited.
Okay, great. Okay, Diana, you want to start us off with Susan? Maybe Susan can tell us a little bit about herself, her background, and about the Spark of Hudson. What is that all about?
Yeah, sure. So by background, I'm a tech entrepreneur and also an investor, and recently launched the Spark of Hudson, located in Hudson, New York, and we are a community learning center. And we've also launched a pilot that is a UBI pilot, so very apropos of today, and very excited about it.
So tell us a little bit about how you got involved with UBI, Susan. I understand you, this is not new to you, is it?
No, I've learned knew about UBI for years. And in fact, my first exposure to it was, I wrote a blog post sort of asking the question, why is UBI so useful? And that actually turned into a TEDx talk that I did on my journey to learn about universal basic income. And from there, I became much more convinced of why it was useful. In fact, I did a survey as part of that talk, and I asked, I asked the question: if you knew at age 18 that you had $1,000 a month guaranteed for life, how would your life have changed? And I got, in just a space of 3 or 4 hours, I had about 750 people take my survey.
Wow.
And I mean, it was really amazing, the responses I got, because each one of them talked about how their life would have completely and dramatically changed. They said they would have traveled more, they would have started businesses or started them sooner, they would have not gone into professions like being a lawyer, engineer, but rather they would have pursued their passions like being an artist or a musician. So just people's regrets of how their life had turned out because they had to do the sensible thing and take the jobs that their parents thought they should rather than following their heart was just actually quite heartbreaking.
That's an aspect that Enno has really brought to life for me, and that is just a personal liberation that that UBI could bring over and above just meeting your daily survival needs, but that there's a spiritual kind of awakening and liberation that you just touched on, Susan. When folks can kind of, okay, maybe I can pursue my dreams. I can really pursue my passion. And I know, you've talked about that a lot in terms of what's kind of your sense of the real power of UBI.
Yeah, and as you see what Susan said, people know what they want. And if we consider what is a human being, we can see that a human being has a spirit, and a human being has a need to fulfill the dreams and to unfold the potential. So this is also scientifically proved that this is what human beings want to be, to become, to unfold the potential and to find the circumstances and environment that fits to them. And an unconditional basic income would give this basis for people to really have the chance to their biography. And that's what Susan said. And that inspires people. And that would make a much more peaceful, innovative, and society that has a bigger cohesion and not such split like we see today. So, and Susan, let me ask you, you are also involved in the foundation Humanity Forward of Andrew Young, is that true?
Yes, on the board there.
And the project you are doing with Albert Wenger together in Hudson is partly financed by the Foundation Humanity Forward and partly by other donors. So is it with the participation of Andrew Young?
Well, he's really stepped away from it. So right now, it really is sort of a program that's ensconced in Hudson. And we have partnered with local organizations to really kind of make the pilot what it should be, which was my hope from the beginning, that this really became something out of the community. And because I think that is one reason why it's gone so well. Is because we involve the community and leaders of the community in every aspect of planning and implementation of the pilot.
I think that's very important, that it's not just from abroad, from outside, but that it is with the understanding and the will of the people. And the mayor of the community where you are doing it is also part of this group of mayors for UBI.
That's
right?
correct. Yeah. So Mayor Kamal Johnson has been a wonderful cheerleader for the pilot, and he was instrumental in the implementation of it. We created an advisory board that consisted of leaders from various organizations in Hudson, and he was one of them. And together we've really figured out what kind of criteria should be there to select the participants. How do we want the trial to run? And that, all of that criteria really came out of lots and lots of community meetings that we had. So, and yes, the mayor was a real champion from day one.
So that's interesting that you have had the contacts. It's a social work. It is with many meetings and talks and conversations with the people. So this is important for such a project to be successful. Can you tell a little bit about the structure of the project? How many people are, what's the amount and so on?
Sure, yeah, so 25 participants are selected, each of whom are receiving $500 a month for a period of 5 years. So it's actually one of, if not the longest running pilot in the US, and it's actually the first small city UBI pilot. The city of Hudson is super small. It's only about 6,000 people. So with 25 participants, it's actually not so insignificant in terms of the number.
Yeah, but that's interesting for me. So it is a little bit similar to the project that took place in Stockton, $500, but your term of time is longer. It's 5 years. That's a long term of time, long period of time. And are there some results already that you see? So, for example, I think it's important, even if the number of the people is so small, it is a discussion in the whole community and abroad and with the authorities and the community and the higher levels of authorities. What is your experience?
So, well, I should first say that we have a researcher that we're working with to really kind of dig in to to find out really what the results are. And we're also super careful in terms of privacy of the individuals. It's a small town, so every little bit that one reveals, you can figure out who's who, right? So we really have tried to be extra super careful to make sure that the pilot remains sort of trustworthy and people feel like they can make decisions and they have agency over their own decisions. There will be at least one, probably more coming forward in terms of talking about what their experiences are. But off the bat, I can say that we've seen there be more participation in community projects and community work, which is one of the things that we were hoping to see, and in fact has come to bear. Because as you know, once one is freed from having to work every second of the day at a paying job, whether it's at McDonald's or wherever it is, then one has time to give back and volunteer in the community, and that we've seen as well, which is wonderful.
I think this is the experience of many people. If there is such thing like an unconditional basic income, it was the same thing in Germany by the project that were conducted here. If people get that like a gift, then they give the money as a gift, or they give their time as a gift to others. So what you put in comes out. If you put in everything is egoism, everything is fighting for your survival, then this is a society, and that is war each against everybody. And if you give such awareness and appreciation and such thing like a gift, then people act like that, they behave like that. So we create a society in the way how we give the right to live, and an unconditional basic income is like every income is the right to live. So that's very interesting for me. Stu, may I ask one more question?
Oh, please, carry on.
Okay, it's so interesting for me what Susan and Albert are doing there. So you want to enlarge the project, I guess. And Albert said, and that was funny for me to listen to, he said, oh, it would be better if you don't need dollars to do that, if you can create a currency for that. And we have had this conversation with teams from the Freiburg Institute for Basic Income Studies. And that's an interesting idea for me too, so that maybe we can expand pilot projects by using a community currency. A complementary currency can be blockchain currency or whatever. What is your idea about that?
Yeah, I think it's a super interesting idea to test out. The power of having community currency, which is currency that's not backed by the dollar, right? Where it's community currency that people trust, because really that's what currency is, right? I could pay for something Absolutely. And you trust that it has value, right? And so working out a system using currency that is created, whether it's in our own city, but more likely we're looking at currency that will cover a few counties in the area, so that it's not so small that there are enough places where you can exchange money, I think is a really interesting way to be able to expand on this idea of basic income, where eventually you can create a program whereby everybody first can start off by getting what would be equivalent of, say, $20 or $40 worth of currency. You don't want to start so big, but something small that then, and have certain places, whether it be restaurants, or in our case, we're thinking one of the programs we're looking at starting is a community solar farm, right? So you would then be able to use that currency to, say, pay for your electricity. So we're looking at certain places where they will give value to the currency that people have automatically.
So I think this is interesting if it's in a region with farmers and all that supply chains change, then complementary currency makes sense because people can buy with it, can buy what they need for their drugstore, can buy, for example, for electricity, or the most interesting thing is can pay taxes with it. So that would be the
Exactly, and we've had conversations as well with the city, introducing that potential idea that maybe partly one could pay. So these are beginning conversations, and obviously it's something that will take time to implement and plan. But I think it can be super interesting to expand the idea of having universal basic income within a community.
So maybe you know that Stu and Diana and me, we thought about a small little pilot project in Harlem too, but I guess the circumstances are so different. So Harlem as a part of Manhattan, and you in a more countryside region. Do you have any idea, or what do you think about pilot project in Harlem? Is something in your mind when you're thinking about it?
Yeah, in fact, Diana and I were talking a little bit about this earlier, that, Hudson is 6,000 people. It probably covers one building in Harlem.
Yes.
Right? But actually, if you think about it, that would be kind of interesting, right? Is to take just one building and see the people, just take one tiny little area and a building or something, and start super small and see what happens, and whether there's a community that forms within the building, right? Whether they, and how that would affect one another and the families and the community, rather than kind of making it all of Harlem, which I imagine just be enormous, right?
Right. I would like to say, not just Harlem, but because we are NYCHA, we're kind of focusing on the New York City Housing Authority. Could maybe take certain buildings in neighboring areas and see the outcome of the families that are chosen, and how that would reflect on the others.
Yeah, I mean, something that we're also doing, which I think is kind of interesting, is we have the 25 participants, but we also have a control group going on in Hudson. So there are 50 individuals that have sort of similar characteristics of those that were chosen for the program. And then through the study, there's going to be, they'll be able to kind of compare the two groups. So that you could do something similar in Harlem, right? You would have your the buildings where it was implemented, and the buildings that weren't.
So that would be a great idea. Yes.
I think one point. Sorry, Diana.
Okay, if you don't mind, absolutely. I want to talk about the outcome again. My whole thing is that I remember the report which said that the safest city in America was found in Stockton, California. Why? Because the result is of this particular study, this project, that people felt comfortable, they felt safe within themselves and safe with the community, and they had less crime. And it's quite, it's very personal to me, because I'm actually, one of my other titles is president over my community council, police community council. So I'm getting stats all the time. I hear when something happens in my area. I'm called to, speak on behalf. And the crime is going up due to lack of financial, due to lack of just a lot of things during this pandemic. So I'm looking at the outcome. So what would you say the outcome has showed you in the current state of the study you're doing now?
Right. So I should say that we actually just recently started it. So there are only, I think we started, the first payment was in October. So there's really only been, I think now we're up to the 4th or 5th payment. I think it comes on the 15th of every month. Where are we now? So it's due to come and drop in 5 days for this month. But
but I didn't realize it was really that new. Okay.
Yes, it is, and but I will, we'll have to meet again in another year or two, and I will keep you posted on that front.
Yes.
I assume the results will not be different from other pilot projects. And you can, even if you don't do a pilot project, you just can think about what happens when people get more ability to be responsible for their own lives. So always in all the pilot projects, the evidence was the most important point is the unconditional. That's what other people from other pilot projects told me. It is not so much the amount. The amount is important because that's the money. But more important is the unconditional. This is so surprising for people. It is something in this world which is unconditional given. And that reminds people that so many things we are living from are unconditionally given, like the sun, like that our eyes can see, so many things, and we forgot it. We are living in a world where the ideology says nothing is for nothing, nothing is given unconditional, you have to work for it, you have to be in any kind of utility and function, otherwise you are not worth living. And this unconditional is breaking through this wall of ideology. And so I think the results will be brilliant, and it's such a benefit for the people, much more than just the money. And that's very interesting, Susan, what you said. And I think for us, if we are going forward with this project, is that it needs to involve the people, the community, to have conversations, to have meetings, to have the power, the belief and the strength of the people who are then doing this project or getting the money, so that this is not just from outside. This is important, I guess, and that's very important for me to listen to you if you do it in Harlem. And the second is, I think, maybe that's what I'm just thinking about, and maybe you have an idea for that, that a complementary currency would not work as well as it can work in Hudson and that area. Because what happens with a complementary currency in a city, in a big city? So you need people who accept that. You need a community that trusts to that complementary currency. You need this this follow-up of drugstore and pharma and delivering this and delivering that and all that stuff. You need more community working together than you can get in Harlem, I guess. It's a question.
Yeah.
Or maybe Diana, you know better. But Susan, it's a question to you.
Yeah, well, so a couple of things that you mentioned, I think is super interesting and striking. So the idea of it being unconditional, no strings attached, right? So when we first started this, people were disbelieving, to your point, like, because you never get anything for free, right? So,
right.
It really has been taking time, where they actually see that the payment drops in their bank account and they didn't have to do anything. Right. And that feeling that actually, so we really have tried this in this first phase of the project, like to completely leave people alone and just, make sure that they know they do not have to do anything and the money will come. And that is super powerful. Right. So, and even the study that we're doing, if they can choose to participate or not to participate, it's absolutely voluntary. And in fact, if they do participate, they'll get paid for participating, because we want to make sure that they don't think that that's something that's required from the money that drops. So that's interesting. And then the other thing I wanted to mention was when you talk about the community participation, when we were figuring out how the pilot should run and who should participate. We had, I mentioned, we had meeting after meeting with lots of, many residents in Hudson, and one of the women who was ran one of the organizations, Kaya Weidman runs Kite's Nest, which is a really interesting organization. She recommended that we make the selection process equity-based. And the way it worked was there's a study called the Opportunity Atlas, and what it does is it took people's likelihood for success depending on what race they were, what gender they were, and where they lived. So I think it was those three factors. And so what we did was we turned those criteria on its head. So the less likely people had to succeed based on that study, the more likely they were to be selected. So they got more lottery tickets to participate if they were less likely to succeed.
That's great.
And in the end, we came, the statistics, we have a wonderful sort of cross section of Hudson as a result. There are 50% are Black, 11% Hispanic, 34% white, 3% Asian, 69% female, 23% male, 3.85% non-binary, non-conforming, 3.85% transgender. So it really is a cross section of Hudson.
Wow. Fascinating. I'd just like to say that this is WHCR 90.3, the voice of Harlem. You're listening to Community and Technology, and this is our special broadcast every month on Unconditional Basic Income with my co-hosts, Diana Blackwell and Enno Schmidt, and special guest today, Susan Danziger from Spark on the Hudson. And we're hearing about a very exciting project that they just launched in Hudson, which is upstate New York. A UBI program launched about 4 or 5 months ago. And Susan has been filling us in on how that is working in her community. Susan, the demographics that you just relayed, those are the demographics of the folks that were chosen to participate in the program, is that right? Or is that your city demographics? No,
that was actually the ones who ended up participating in our pilot program.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Interesting. So what are the demographics of Hudson? I'm not familiar with this. Can you tell us just a little bit about, you said it's a city of 6,000. What are the demographics?
Yeah, so I think it probably pretty much reflects. What's super interesting about the city is that it has such a wide variety of people. There's probably 30, 40, maybe even 50% people who live there are Black. We've got a big Latino population. We have, whites. We have super wealthy, super poor. We have incredible, it's somebody mentioned on a per capita basis, so super tiny. It's the third largest creative community in the US. So lots of people who are, in the creative world, using expansively. It's a real foodie town as well. Lots of chefs and restaurants, there. So the way I see Hudson is it really is a microcosm of the US. And as far as I'm concerned, if we can figure this out in Hudson, it can be a really interesting model for other communities around the US as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just back to my last question, complementary currencies for Harlem. What do you think? Could that work or not?
I think if you have enough places where it actually can be accepted, like enough, whether it's restaurants or whatever, you think of it as sort of nodes, right? Where, you have people who have the currency, but then you also need places where they can spend it. So if you can really, and it's work getting those folks or places to sign up for it. So if you're willing to do the work to be able to get the vendors, and whether it's, food, places where you get food, grocery stores, or, whether potentially taxes, potentially, whatever those anchors are in place, then I think it can work.
Potentially rent, Diana, huh? All rent is paid by complementary currency, given as an unconditional basic income.
Somebody also mentioned something super interesting, which may be something to consider, which is, what if you were to take places that would otherwise be free. So for instance, the Salvation Army or places like that, and actually have them accept a local currency. The idea is it can give dignity to people to actually be able to purchase things rather than just, get things for free. I think that, building a dignity is I think can be really valuable.
That is sorry, Diana.
Sorry, I'm sorry. You gonna let me go?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm thinking of such city projects as health bucks. We could possibly ask the city, who actually gives $2 off of anything that you purchase from one of the green markets, change that into a currency that could be changed, could be used. Am I in the right ballpark with that thought? Because if you're talking about creating partnerships that will accept it, and we can go to the city, use the health bucks instead of the health bucks itself being used, we can use a currency. I'm also thinking of, yes, like you said, I'm on the, you know what SWAB is, right? SWAB, Solid Waste Advisory Board.
Okay, that's new to me.
One of my other hats. But saying that they also have taken clothes that you're actually throwing away, and instead of taking it to Goodwill, they have a big warehouse that you can, basically purchase used clothes at very cheap prices, or they'll, donate them. So are these the type of partnerships you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's super interesting. And then you could also think about maybe projects like volunteer projects that could then be potentially paid with bucks, so that you have, whatever Harlem bucks or whatever it would be, so that people could then use, as long as people are accepting them, they're valuable, right? So if there are restaurants that want to support the community, maybe that they would take, and you could earn bucks by, say, cleaning up the streets or taking out their, whatever those, maybe planting gardens, whatever it is. And the restaurants or maybe it's some of the facilities you're talking about, if they're willing to take them as kind of supporting the community, then that's what gives that currency value, right?
That's good.
And I think one point is very important. If you try to implement such a complementary currency, the effect is that you have a topic to talk with the people. You have something to talk about. You have a subject where people can be interested. You spread the idea. You create meetings and teams and so on. I think this is very important, and sometimes people don't think about that. So, for example, when we made the referendum in Switzerland, we did not expect the majority of the votes, but we knew that this will spread the idea. This gives a discussion in the whole country, in every household. So this is very important, to create publicity, to create awareness in the population. And such topic as like a complementary currency, and who accept that, and what is the benefit of the advantage of it, and what is not so good, and all that creates a field of thinking, of atmosphere, of cohesion of the people. And I think just for that, it's interesting to try to start a discussion about the complementary currency for unconditional basic income, and for a better life in Harlem is interesting. Even if the result is not that you implement that, but you create a basis, and you can go forward with those people to think about unconditional basic income and other kinds of implementing it, and so on. I think this is very important for me. The most important point you told about that, to work with the community is so important. So that you said, Susan, that this is the basis of your project. And I think it's the same in Harlem. It should be the same in Harlem. And we could have that in your projects, Diana. So Diana actually is the mayor of Harlem. And
Yeah,
So
people
Diana,
yeah.
no, I just want to get Diana's thoughts on how a complementary currency might work in Harlem. Is that something you think that we can pull off? Maybe if we just start in
like
one
what,
development.
yeah, and I like what Susan said. It's based on partnering, finding the partnership that will support our idea.
Mm-hmm.
I said to some time ago, it was Rupert Murdoch that he told me about, said that if he can, someone can persuade him that it will work, he will support it. So we need to be able to persuade people to support us. What is, again, I started with the outcome. What is the outcome? What do we want, or what do they want to see change in the community, especially when we're talking about addressing NYCHA, New York City Housing Authority, as being low income. I'm going to also, somebody's been very quiet. Miguel, you and I talk about a lot of these things all the time. What are your thoughts on this?
And please unmute yourself, Miguel.
Miguel, jump in. I'll just let you ready? Okay, but Susan, I'm going to go back to what you were saying. Partnerships, somebody that will believe in it. Once you believe, once you're buying into it, you become a partner. You have to believe. And once that happens, then the risk is much easier to take. And whatever they want to see, that's what that's the goal, and I would love to see job creations, because once you receive an income, that freedom is there for you to think outside the box and do things that you want.
Absolutely. I mean, I think what they found in lots of studies of other UBI pilots is people having agency to start their own businesses that then lead to other jobs, right? Not just to pursue your own profession, but then to really kind of dream. And then also have the agency to leave relationships and leave situations that may prevent you from growing and prospering. I mean, there are, so many stories where, people leave unfortunate situations because then they have the agency and the wherewithal and the money to be able to do it. But yeah, absolutely. What you're saying is correct, that, to create jobs and to create a better future for us all. Yeah.
Less crime, better nutrition, less domestic violence, better education, more cohesion as a society, more people who do voluntary work because they see the need. And this is a basic will of the people. If they see that there's a need and they can help, then this creates meaning for their life, and they like to do it. They like to do things where they see, oh, this makes sense, this is good for other people. And that is life quality, to be able to do things where you see this is good for others, and I contribute to the well-being of other people. So this is so important, and this is what work is. Work is not just paid work. And a dear friend of mine said, there is as much work as people are there. So because this is what work is, it is to do good things for others. It is to fulfill your capacities in relation to your environment, your human environment, or with animals, in the nature, with the art, or whatever. But this is inside of people, that they want to do things. And that is the same like life. And that's what I sometimes told also in this show, that our understanding of work is paid jobs is a slave understanding. It's not the understanding of free people. So this is to be forced to do things, not by your own will. And there's no difference between life and work. So life is work. Work is to do essential things, to do things in the community, in the society, to become who you are. This is work, and to benefit to the others. And that at the end is what economy is. It's a social relationship between other people. And by this, an unconditional basic income, of course, is much more than just to give the money. So the money is very important because this is the basis, but the change of our conception of what work is, what economy is, and many things will change. And the conception that we cannot do anything against the power of the holy money. So money is not God. Money is what we create. And it is like we created, and it can benefit everybody or just a few.
And it's also being valued for the work you're doing. I mean, how many caretakers, moms or people, you know, taking care of elderly, you know, who never get money for it. And it's something that should be valued. And this is a way to be able finally to get paid for work that should be valued by society.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Diana, I see that Miguel has unmuted himself. Maybe he's.
Yes, I was. I was
Okay.
finally able to do it. I was here struggling with it. And I'm gonna just step back a little bit because I was remembering. I'm a little younger than a lot of y'all here, but back in the 70s.
Thanks, Miguel.
Back in the 70s, they were doing a thing with it was called Black Bucks, where the African American community was spending money in their community to keep the money circulating within their community. And how as a UBI is almost putting a condition on it, because then we would have to kind of like confront or get the community businesses to accept those dollars from them, which kind of takes the unconditional off of it, because then you would have to spend it there to make it worth anything. So will we be putting ourselves in a position where we almost, you know, we are tying their hands to where they would shop because their money would be accepted?
Yeah, that's a very important consideration. So that's true. And it maybe you can think of it like this is a first step in the direction of an unconditional basic income. But I think it's very important what you said.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, Miguel, I think, you know, there are two things here. One is the unconditional basic income, and the other is the complementary currency. They can work together, or they can work independently, at least is my understanding. So you can have
it wouldn't be tied to the UBI itself.
Well, UBI could exist without the currency, without the community currency. You could have an unconditional basic income. Okay. And also the community currency could also exist without a UBI platform. At least that's my understanding of it. Is that right, Susan?
Yeah, that's correct. So in Hudson, the pilot, like people are getting actual dollars, $500 a month for 5 years. So there's no community currency at this point as part of the pilot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, but I think sorry.
Go ahead, Enno.
No, I just wanted to ask Miguel. So because for me, I learned a lot about the planning of an unconditional basic income little pilot project in Harlem today from Susan and her experiences and how they did it. Miguel, I'm interested to hear from you. What do you think? What is important for that project, and what did you learn today?
I guess because I think the thing that I kind of like was attracted to is to be able to see that it is working. Is to like Diana said, it's like to take a nice development, a building where we maybe have 10, 15 people that participating in the UBI to see if they are able to And I guess it goes back to Susan too, because it has to be voluntary, because we want to be able to keep it unconditional. But we will still be able to monitor to see if the program is working. To kind of, I mean, Night is large, Harlem is large, New York is large. So, but be able to maintain it to a point where we can see how it's really working within our community.
I'm going to kind of piggyback on that because what I'm thinking, if a life or lives will change for the better, this is our goal. Because we should have equity while we're living on this earth. And if this income would bring a form of equity so that people can finish their school, that they can get a job, get their education to get a career, they will remain healthy. And I'm going to say healthy because I think about the statistics here in Harlem for the coronavirus. Why is it that our numbers were so high at one point? It's because food insecurity, the inequity in the food distribution. If I go on the other side of Central Park, in the little bodegas, they call them bodegas, but you'll find healthy foods and they can afford them. And on the other side where we are, we have bodegas and we have 25 cents, 50 cents chips because we can afford them. That's inequity, food inequity. So
Right.
I believe this would really, this UBI would cause an equity, a situation of equity, and that's what it should do. That's the result that we're looking for. Equity in every area of people's lives.
Better health. This is the result even of this not good pilot project in Finland. So better health. People are more healthy. Less diseases, and in particular, less mental diseases, because mental diseases often come from this stress, everyday stress of the basic needs, this indignity behavior around you, having no respect. And there's a very interesting study, just to mention it, in the US, that figured out that disrespect creates violence. You can immediately understand that. You can feel that. Disrespect creates violence. And this is from someone who was director of prisons and so on, and scientist. He made a lot of studies about that, and he proved that, and he can say that this is a cause of most of violence, the experience of disrespect. And you know what? In a society where it is possible to be very rich and living very comfortable with everything you need, and on the other side, living in poverty, and seeing this gap is a form of experience of disrespect to yourself. So that all that society diversion, all this. So, for example, the gap between rich and poor, this is with results, is with impact on the society and the behavior of the people, and crime, for example. So, and having bad nutrition, not the good food, is weakening your immune system, and that makes it COVID can kill you.
That's so true. And in a city like New York, as big and diverse as, you don't even have to go on the other side of town. I'm thinking like Polly's development, Diana, where there's a public housing development on one side of the street, and on the other side of the street, the very same street, you have multi-million-dollar townhouses within spitting distance of each other. So that whole disparity, as Enno so described, is like right in the face of so many folks. And I like the way that you described it, as disrespect. That's an interesting perspective, and that really kind of encapsulates, I think, the feelings of so many low income and poor folks.
It is.
Yeah, we're about winding down. We just have a couple minutes left, so I'd like to go around and get final comments from folks. Let me start with Susan. Any final thoughts or comments for either our guests here or for our audience, Susan?
Right. First of all, I think this is super interesting. I love that idea of disrespect. One thing that also dawned on me is that, the most precious thing that we have in life is time, right? And, how is it that we spend our days and our lives, and so if we can add meaning to people's lives and make it so that they don't actually have to be at a job just like doing something that's not using their brain, with slinging burgers or something where they actually find meaning in it, then I think that's the most precious thing that we can give to people. I also want to give a shout out to the folks that are running the Hudson Up program, who are of the community, Joni Hunn, who runs the Greater Hudson Promise neighborhood, and Nicole Fallon, who works with her. I mean, there's some amazing people that I'm working with in Hudson that are just, I think, to your point, it's really about the people in the community. And if you can get as wonderful partners as we've gotten, I think that you'll be off to a great start.
Do you have a website, Susan, where folks can find out more about your project?
Absolutely. If you go to hudsonup.org, you'll find out about our UBI program there. And we're at thesparkofhudson.org.
Okay, great. Enno, any final thoughts or comments for Susan?
Well, of course, I'm very grateful for your stories, Susan, and your informations. And it shows for me very clearly that it has to come to the ground in the beginning. So not to living in illusions and what we can do, come to the ground, make it real. And that is make it real in the community, in the discussions, the debates, and in the partnerships you are creating. So then it's on earth, and then everything is clear and not an illusion. And that's very important for me to be reminded by that every day.
Mm-hmm. And Diana, closing comments or thoughts for Susan or our guests here?
Well, Susan, you've just kind of stirred my little pot here. I'm really happy to know that there's something right here in, I won't say walking distance, but I've been on the train to Hudson on the Croton. So I know where that is. And I'm excited to know that there's a project somewhere near, and I will be following you. That will be something that I'm going to set my goals to be. And thank you. I really appreciate you.
Okay, well, thank you all. On behalf of Enno Schmidt, Diana Blackwell, and
Miguel?
myself, want to thank you, Susan, for joining us today on Community and Technology.
Thank you so much.
Okay, this has been Community and Technology at WHCR 90.3, our special UBI broadcast with Enno Schmidt, Diana Blackwell, and a special guest, Susan Danziger from Spark on the Hudson. Thanks for tuning in. See you next week.
Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.